10 minutes.
Gormagat Lascan Corla. First of all, I would like to acknowledge the excellent publication from the Irish Forestry and Forest Producers Association, who gave a very interesting overview of the forestry sector that was sent out to us, and it's some very interesting facts and figures, and very valuable to the publication, to the debate that we're having here. It's worth putting on record, I suppose, that in 2012 the forestry sector contributed some 2.2 billion to the Irish economy, and overall forestation levels at present are about 10.5%. Now, whilst that's low in comparison to many of our European counterparts, it is increasing in a long way higher than it was once upon a time, and growing, and that's important and that's positive. It's also obviously an indigenous commodity. It's a rural-based industry providing jobs for rural Ireland, and it's an export-led industry. Some 78% of products being exported from the country, and that is extremely positive. In terms of my own area, I'd like to acknowledge the role of ECC Timber Products Limited in Carnamona, Connemara and County Galway, and the importance that company has to the local economy there as well, and bringing timber and processing timber from long distances. The industry has good projections into the future, and I think that's a positive. Growth projections are positive in relation to the industry into the future. Some 731,650 hectares of land are presently forested. The state owned about 54% of those, and private plantations 46%. That contributes 1.3% of GDP, and some 12,000 people employed in the sector. And as Deputy Harrington said, some 18 million recreational visits to Irish forests, and that's a huge industry there on its own. That level of people and the use that they make of our forests in rural areas, particularly our broadleaf plantations. And it's good to see that since 1996, since the revised support scheme was put in place, that broadleaf plantations have now increased, and to some 38% of new plantings in 2010 were broadleaf. Obviously, forests play a huge role, not just to the industry itself and the importance of exports, but also in terms of the landscape of our rural society, and not just our forests, but also our hedgerows, and a treeless landscape will be a lesser landscape to locals and visitors alike. And one of the most common landscape trees is, of course, our ash tree, and it's very important also to the broadleaf sector as well. It's the most important broadleaf tree in Ireland, and I'd like to commend Minister Hayes and previous Minister McEntee and the department officials on the very positive measures and engagement that they have had on this issue, and which can still have very serious consequences for our ash trees and for our indigenous industry and the forestry industry. However, in Ireland, as an island nation, we're possibly in a more unique position regarding the ability to eradicate this from the country, whereas other countries maybe only have the possibility of containment of this disease. So I'd like to, as I said, commend those involved. One issue also that has been brought to my attention is regards the EU National Renewable Energy Plan, and the targets that are welcome targets. Some 16% is the target for Ireland's energy to be met from renewable sources, and by 2020 that all peat fired power generation stations will be 30% coal-fired with wood biomass. Now, some concern has been raised within the sector regarding the ability of the forestry sector to meet this without actually using some of the more valuable timber products as opposed to, or as distinct from, the biomass per se. And that would be of concern if in order to meet these targets in our peat fired stations, that they had to actually burn timber that was more valuable as a commodity in terms of further processing. And that would be of concern that has been raised, but that's something I suppose to keep an eye on into the future as those targets are raised. Just in relation to some aspects of the bill, Section 6A2, aerial fertilisation of forests. I'm not sure how much of that goes on anymore in the country. I know in my area in Connemara that it has been ceased, to the best of my knowledge, following a lot of concern regarding pollution to our streams, rivers and lakes. And obviously high levels of rock phosphate being used in the forestry plantations can leach into the lake following these aerial applications and cause eutrophication or algal blooms of our waterways. So I'm not sure how much of that is actually going on at the moment, and I'm sure if there is, that there is stringent plans in terms of applications, rates, timing of applications, weather conditions when applications are made, and also proximity of applications to existing streams, rivers and lakes. So I'm sure that is all in the plan. If not, it should be. Section 6b talks about the forest management plans. Again, what types of conditions could be attached to these plans. Again, it is a requirement, and I know it's laid down in the functions that you have in terms of the environmental responsibility that will fall that will ensue with this bill, and that is important. But just in terms of the costs that might be associated with those, that they wouldn't be prohibitive. Section 6e talks of powers regarding compulsory purchase of lands that would be deemed suitable. That would be possibly contentious, if those powers are pursued. I appreciate there's a lot of land that is very much suited to forestry, and I know when I used to prepare reps plans myself once upon a time, you used to have to oblige to state those plots of land which were most suited to forestry plantation. So, but I think powers, as outlined in 6e, as I said, could be contentious. Section 14 relates to the risk of fires from uncultivated land, and it's sort of somewhat similar to the discussion we've had on other issues regarding land abandonment and underutilisation of large tracts of land, particularly commonage land. And again, I think the department, if they were more focused on, rather than penalising farmers, to make sure that underutilised lands and commonage lands were actually utilised to the full potential, which would reduce the possibility and the chances of fires coming from those areas, because underutilised and undergrazed land has a huge it's a huge risk to our forests. I agree with that. So I think rather than penalising farmers, maybe putting in place policies to ensure that those lands are better utilised would be the way to go. Section 18, again, I welcome the description of exempted trees and definitions and understandings contained within, such as the invasive trees or scrub trees or willow, which will be utilised for fuel. Again, is important. I do have concern about the plight of the native holly tree. And I'm just wondering, can any protection be put in place for those? I'm not talking about, coming up to Christmas, people taking a sprig of holly or a branch of holly with berries for decorations. But, cutting a full tree and full berries, it would be a concern to me in rural Ireland, because they are scarce as far as I can see. Unfortunately, there has been cases of people cutting a full tree to sell on the markets in various places. So I just would be concerned about that. Another section, I couldn't actually find where it was stipulated in the bill, but I see it in the memorandum, that the Minister has discretion to set conditions to the felling licence, which will include the waiving of the requirement to replant following clear felling. Again, I understand, Minister, the requirements to replant, and that's based on the fact that obviously the state is putting a huge resource into forestry, and when land is forested and clear-felled, you want to encourage people, or to mandate people to replant. I understand and accept that, but there are certain situations, particularly on SSEs or in close proximity, forested lands in close proximity to SSEs, and by SSEs, in this case, in my own area, again, you'll be talking about, again, the lakes and the rivers. And I know anglers would have raised with me concerns about that, and concerns about that it should be easier to receive a derogation in those cases. Again, no more than the aerial fertilisation. Certain types of trees, such as Sitka spruce and certain types of pines, can be damaging to our waterways because of the needles falling into the water and causing acidification. And also, I think this is possibly under the management plans, and I know under the certification that certain bodies have in relation to realistic mandatory riparian zones along lakes and waterways.
1 minute remaining. No matter one.
No matter one. And also that on peatlands, that they shouldn't be planted down to the edge of lakes or streams or rivers. Again, that was something that was looked for as well. Clear felling, I think there has been a change in that, and clear felling is now more piecemeal than it was, because again there was concerns about large-scale clear felling on peatlands, which would lead to leaching of nutrients. Obviously, in high rainfall areas that you would have in the west, you would have leaching of nutrients into our streams, rivers and lakes as well, and that would have a negative impact. But that's not to overemphasize those concerns. I mean, obviously, forestry has huge potential for our economy, very important to our rural economy, very important in terms of job creation, and certainly in relation, I welcome over the years the positive increases in broadleaf tree planting, and I think both in terms of aesthetics and in terms of the environmental benefits that comes from those type of trees is very welcome and very important. I'd like to commend the Minister and the officials for the work done on this bill, and hope that this bill will lay the foundations for an increase and further increase in the levels and hectarage of commercial forestry planted in this country.